Hello and welcome back to Analogue. Happy 2023. So this video is basically going to be a short guide, a little 101 on how to shoot black and white film at night. If you haven't seen any of our black and white videos at night, you can click the link up here, or we'll leave the links below as well, so you can go and check them out once you've watched this video, of course.
So the reason for this video today is we've been getting some messages on Instagram and our YouTube channel in the comments about how do you do it.
So before we start, we're going to run a little list of things that you're going to need to start shooting black and white film at night. This one isn't necessary, but go grab yourself a beer from your local watering hole. Get yourself warmed up and loosened up, ready for the night ahead.
So number one is a good sturdy tripod.
The second thing you're going to need is a shutter release cable. The reason you're going to need this is you're not going to want to be holding your shutter button on your camera. That will result in shakiness of your photos. You'll obviously move your camera on your tripod when you're composing your image and taking the shot. So shutter release cable is 100% necessary.
Obviously the third thing you're going to need is a decent black and white film. You're going to need a good ISO range, so we recommend a 400 ISO, or you could use HP5 and push that. Me and Josh both use Delta 400 and sometimes we use HP5, but we don't push it. We shoot at box speed and we sort of rest out and develop it a bit later on.
Let's start with metering for your scene. Obviously you're going to need a light meter. I wouldn't necessarily trust the light meter that your camera has. It will struggle a little bit more in the lower light situations. The best thing to have is either an external light meter, or you can use an app on your phone. So you're going to want to meter the entire scene before deciding on your selected shutter speed and apertures. Obviously the smaller aperture you have, the more detail you're going to get. A lot of people just jump straight into opening their aperture as wide as they possibly can and losing a lot of detail. Obviously the luxury of having the tripod and the shutter release cable means that you can have a smaller aperture, retain some detail, but have a slightly longer exposure. So that's something to bear in mind when metering for a scene. So what I like to do when metering for a certain scene, it's good to sort of visualise how you want your shot before you take it. I quite often meter for both the highlighted areas of my shot and the shadows, and sort of take an in-between metering. If you want a slightly more contrasted looking composition, what you're going to want to do is meter for the highlights themselves, so everything else around it is black. If you meter for the shadows, and you want all the shadows to have a little bit more detail, you're going to obviously want to meter for the shadows rather than the highlighted part of the scene.
And just to touch on that, I meter different to Josh. I will use the spot meter in my camera, and then I will use my ambient Seconic meter that I have to just take a general meter of the scene itself, so I know exactly what it is, and then I use the spot meter in my camera for the highlights.
So shooting black and white film at night is an interesting one. I think a lot of the scenes and compositions that you would find in the day that you wouldn't necessarily think twice about quite easily become a lot more picturesque and cinematic at night. So here's a little comparison of what we mean by that. I think if you have a good eye for photography, it's going to be quite easy to visualise how your shot's going to look Obviously it is going to be black and white at night, so you need to get yourself in that right mindset and sort of visualise in your head how you want each shot to look. Don't be disheartened if you take a roll of film out at night and it's not how you want it to look. Practice makes perfect. We've had our fair share of shooting black and white at night now, so we roughly know what we're looking for and what to expect. If you don't set your expectations too high on your first run, I think you'll probably be relatively surprised at how your results turn out.
In regards to what to look for, I like to look for ambient light. So if there's, say, a nice old car, Josh has got a brilliant photo, I'll get him to put up of a beetle with a lamppost, and because of the light, it makes that photo. Now, if you was to take that photo without the ambient light, I don't think you get any detail. So you've really got to look for some light if you want to take photos of a certain subject. So that's when you could take a torch with you, or you can do light painting. There's this endless list of stuff you can do with night photography. When you're looking out and about metering, I look for little signs in shops. There's a record one I've done, and it's got a record store, a little green light. I shot that in black and white, and it came up really nice. But the street was also lit by street lights, so the more light you can sort of get around your subjects that you're taking a photo of, the better. And shutter speeds are not as long, so you don't really have to counter in reciprocity as much, but you still have to take that into consideration.
So let's talk about apertures really quick. Ideally you want to take a lens that you know is relatively sharp anyway, so even if you drop it right down you'll still get a lot of detail. What we tend to go for when shooting at night in regards to apertures, we tend to stick to between about 5.6 and f11. I think that's a good sort of starting point. If you start at 5.6, obviously you're going to allow a little bit more light to enter your camera before you start going into the really long exposures of f11, f16 and upwards. Yeah, of course I'm not ruling f2 or f2.8 out. Obviously if there's a scene that you think is well lit and you want to get close up and you want the background to be blurred, or like Tom said, you want to get that bokeh in the background, then by all means use the 2.8. Just use your intuition at the end of the day. But as a whole sort of scene in your image, if you've got nothing close and nothing far away that you want to sort of blur out from your image, I think between f5.6 and f11 is your best bet. So yeah, talking about certain compositions that you wouldn't necessarily take in the day, there's one here that I want to talk about real quick. We was down in Rye. It is in one of our black and white at night videos if you want to go and check it out, like we said in the beginning. But it is the side of a building with a street light. Now, it's a very simple shot. I think you've actually taken it in the day, that same shot. When we went back to revisit Rye and I saw the composition itself, it's just got one bedroom light on in one of the houses and the street light carving down the bricks. The bricks look so detailed and the whole photo looks really cinematic. It almost gives it that spooky sort of feeling. Shooting black and white at night can definitely give you a completely different feeling to what colour film would, and quite often give you a very spooky, eerie style looking composition, and I think that's what we look for quite a lot.
You walk past that shot during the day and you haven't got that street light with the shadow and the contrasty look. Even at night it looks contrasty, but then when you shoot on film and you push it that little bit and you get that really nice sharp contrasty look, you can't beat it.
So let's talk about reciprocity failure really quick. If you don't know what reciprocity is, there's plenty of stuff online or videos that you can watch to fully understand it. But just to run over it briefly, reciprocity failure is where your film, generally after about a second or so of it being exposed to light, will start to fail. So the silver halide and the chemical reaction in your film will not be as sensitive to light as it would be if you were shooting for a second or less. So the longer the exposure, the less sensitive your emulsions are going to become over time. Therefore you're going to need to compensate slightly with a few seconds, depending on how long your exposure is, just to compensate for that loss of sensitivity.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed. And if there's anything we missed or some certain tips that you find helpful when out shooting black and white at night, please drop them in the comments below. If you are venturing out of a roll of black and white film, best of luck, and please do come back and let us know how you got on. As always, please like, comment and subscribe. It really does mean the world to both of us, and we will catch you in the next one.